Mental Mondays ignite the spark. Hope guides each step, even in the dark. New week, new dreams to see. Hope's the key to what's meant to be.
Good Monday, everyone. Welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Hope. That's me. I'm Hope. Before we get started, I want to show you my very, very cool edition, my official PA Empowerment Network hat. I mean, this one's mine, the official one. So I want to say thank you to Kendall Stevenson for making me look so cool and for me to have my merch here so I can proudly represent the PA Empowerment Network. You can please check us out, not just this live broadcast, but please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is free. There's no subscription fees. And make sure that you check me out on Mental Health Mondays on Facebook. You know, people ask about what series they can binge watch. You can binge watch the PA Empowerment Network. So my guest this evening is JOHNETTE Michaels, and we're talking about weight loss surgery, mental health related to weight loss surgery, factors in, the obesity of America. And I'm just really excited to talk to her and get her perspective. And Ms. JOHNETTE, welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Hope.
You're welcome.
Pleasure and a blessing.
You're welcome. So we always start with a positive affirmation from our guests, because we should do that, all of us, every day. Say something positive about ourselves. And what are you, JOHNETTE? I am what?
I am an amazing survivor.
Excellent. Oh, excellent. That's great. That's great.
I usually like to say I am JOHNETTE Michaels. So, because, that is who I have grown into.
Okay.
58 years of life.
Sure. I get you. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that because, like for me, after my divorce, I went back to my maiden name because that's who I am. So I get it, totally get it. So why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about you? You have, nurse student, you've been in EMS, weight loss surgery. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I've worked in healthcare in several facets since I was 16 years old. So 43 years, right? I got my EMT in 1992. I had my first child when I was 22, my second child when I was 24. They were very close together, just 17 months apart. I've always been obese. I've always had an obesity issue. I grew up in a household where there was abuse. There was childhood sexual abuse towards me as the stepchild. I have two sisters, and you could talk to each one of us and our childhood was different, right? And I think that's common in most families.
Sure.
So being an obese child, I suffered a lot of teasing. There's that stigma with obesity. I suffered a lot of teasing throughout elementary school, through high school, and I was always the outsider. I went through, our mental health tends to drive our behaviors, and our behaviors can tend to drive our mental health. It's
absolutely.
So, as I got to my first year of college in 1986, I found beer because that was a way to be accepted, right? So I failed out of my first year of nursing school. I'm not ashamed to say that now. I used to be. And then my mom at that point said to me, look, I wasn't working. I was pretty much sucking off of her. And she's like, look, you got to get a job or get out. So I did both. I became a nanny. I moved to New Jersey. I was a nanny for this wonderful family for 2 years. They paid for my second year in nursing school. I found babies, and I ended up marrying the first man that said he loved me.
Gotcha.
That marriage lasted for about 15 years. Some emotional abuse inflicted on me from him and his second wife. But they were always good to my kids, so I couldn't ask for better for my kids.
Right.
that drove me into a pretty deep depression and anxiety. I met my second husband, my husband, who I'm still married to now, who, Hope knows well, and knows how my frustration sometimes that all married couples go through, right? But he's always been very supportive of whatever I've drugged us into. He has always been very supportive of. So, we've built a life. My son went to nursing school after he came out of the Army. He had been working for a year and then he quit his job. In our day, we didn't just up and quit and go to school, but that's what he did. I helped raise his kids. Between that time, though, between the time of meeting my first husband and my grandchildren being born, I reached a point where I was 410 pounds. I was very unhealthy. I had all the comorbidities, and I hope we get to talk a little bit about those today.
Absolutely.
As a RN student, I would like to educate on that a little bit. And then I was very unhealthy. And in 2014, I was at work. It was a historical building in Philadelphia, so I wasn't able. I was climbing steps. They didn't have the ADA in some of these historical buildings. So I got to the first landing of the steps, and my manager's coming down the steps, and she's like, "JOHNETTE, are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I can't breathe." I got the rest of the way up the steps. I drove home from Philly, and I was living in Emmaus at the time. And I drove home from Philly, and I got home, and I said to Joe, I said, "We need to go to urgent care. I literally can't breathe." And my nail beds were blue. Now, remember, I've been a medic. I've been an EMT for quite some time at this point. So we walked into a St. Luke's urgent care, and I'm not sure that I can say the actual name where I went, but yeah, so we're walking a fine line there. But I walked in, my O2 saturation was between 69 and 70%.
Wow.
And the provider says, "You're getting admitted and you're taking an ambulance." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'll drive myself. I promise you I'll go right there." And he's like, "No, you of all people know you need to take the ambulance." So I took the ambulance to Bethlehem, and I remember saying, "When you call dispatch, please tell them they need a bariatric stretcher." Right. So I spent 7 days in the hospital then. I had uncontrolled diabetes. I had pneumonia exacerbated by what we call CHF, or congestive heart failure. So there was just a lot of fluid in my lungs build up because my heart was not pumping. When I went for my post-hospital follow-up, I walked into my primary care physician, and Joe was with me. I got on the scale and it tapped out at 410. And my second grandchild had just been born. And I looked at Joe and I'm like, and I still couldn't breathe. I still was not breathing well. And I looked at him and very seriously, dead serious, said, "I'm going to die if I don't do something." Well, the physician at that visit asked me if I had ever considered. First of all, he first said I was going home on oxygen. And I said, "No, I'm not." Right? "No, I'm not. I'm stubborn. I'm the caretaker. I am not the care acceptor." So he says, "Have you ever considered weight loss surgery?" "Oh yeah, 3 times before that, 3 different
hospitals.
Okay. Right? "Nope, was not." "Yep, I have." Well, but now I knew. Now my why was here because I was going to die.
Okay, say that again. Your what was here?
My why, my reason.
Your why. Okay, gotcha.
My why was here. I had to do something. Along with that, there were a lot of other issues going on with my adult children. There was not a good relationship. There was a lot of mental health issues on my part. When my second child, who is, how old is he now? 1990, he was born, right? I have to calculate that out.
35.
Yep. So when he was born, I was diagnosed with PTSD and bipolar disorder, anxiety and depression. So I'd been up and down with all of that my entire, from that point forward. Playing with meds can be a vicious cycle because until you get them tweaked right, but the problem with that is when you do get them, there are some side effects.
Right.
And one of them being weight gain.
Right.
But again, when you're talking about the drivers to all of that, it's twofold, right? Your mental health drives your obesity drives your mental health.
Right.
So it can be a very vicious cycle. So here I am, fast forward to today. So fast forward to October 25th, 2016, I had a sleeve gastrectomy. Prior to that, I had a bout with precancerous uterine tissue. So I had a complete hysterectomy. I went back to firefighting too soon. After that, tried to lift a positive pressure fan by myself and ripped my abdominal muscles open to a very large ventral hernia. Yep, which I still have today. But so the point of saying that is when I went in for I was consented for both for the RNY and the sleeve. But when the doctor got in there was too much of the intestine had come through the hernia. So we had to do the sleeve. We couldn't fix the hernia until I was at a somewhat normal BMI because the hernia repair wouldn't have been successful.
Right.
So now fast forward, originally I got from 410 down to 240. Our life got turned upside down with Joe's job. We moved up here to Danville. That's a roller coaster, right? Life hits us in the face.
Absolutely.
It affects our mental health. I regained to about 291. I knew that I was approaching that 300 mark, and I knew if I went over that 300 mark, I was going to slide right back down the other side where I didn't want to be.
Right.
So I went back to my doctors, and now, as of today, I was down to 216.
Wow, that's great. Congratulations.
But, I think we need to point out that the scale is just a number. The scale is like a relative term. I think that's very important because, I'm in the middle of reading a book called Bariatric Mindset by Dr. Kristen Lloyd. Excellent book. It's, having bariatric surgery is about what you can do with your life after that. What I've been able to do is go back to nursing school and live my childhood dream that I've had since I was 5 years old.
Right.
And I think that's part of the abuse too, because having been abused, you want to be the fixer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where that came from. So,
and there's so much around like mental health wise and, obesity wise that's related to abuse, especially to sexual abuse. And that I want to say that it wasn't your fault and that you have people around you. But there is a subconscious, mindset almost of making oneself unattractive. And it's very common to see weight gain and, and maybe bad habits that lead to weight gain and maybe not, proper hygiene and things like that. When it comes to, victims or survivors of sexual abuse. So, there's so much that goes into this that people don't realize.
Yeah. There's a biological thing that goes in. If you think about the neurons in your brain and how they work, that sugar somehow stimulates the dopamine,
right?
That in the feel good center in the hypothalamus, and that's what happens. Is you're not getting love anywhere else, but so you're getting it from that food and from those unhealthy foods.
Right.
I think the statistic I pulled today in prepping for this said that like 39% of people who are abused are obese.
To me, again, being in this field and you being in the, in the medical field and both of us being survivors, it makes sense. We get it. And, I think that it's important that we're talking about this because other people don't understand. And, we're educating people. And I titled this, "You Took the Easy Way Out." Because, people have said that, like, that's, oh, yeah, you had surgery, you took the easy way out. And people just assume that, people who have had weight loss surgery, their obesity comes from just poor habits, poor eating and what have you. And that it doesn't, that there's no correlation with anything else. It's like you made poor decisions, and now, you're obese, and now you're just going to go have this surgery and you're just going to lose weight and everything's going to be easy again. But that's not the case at all, because once the decision is made, because I questioned you, I had you repeat it, your why, because no matter what it is in life, in order for people to make a change, there has to be a why.
Yep.
Like, we can tell people who smoke how bad it is for them. And they might say, yeah, you're right, I know. But until they have a why, they're not going to quit. So until you have a why, or what your why is, like you said, you visited, the thought of weight loss surgery previous to your final decision to have it because of your why. And I think people need to understand that after weight loss surgery itself, life is not easy. It is not the easy way out, not an easy decision to even make. We're going to take a break in about 4 minutes, but I want to kind of just talk about that part a little bit. Let's talk about the after. Well, let's, the pre-surgery, like pre-surgery, right before surgery, and then the after, the lifestyle changes and the eating and things like that. Let's talk about how that's easy. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So
See it, Kendall? I can't see it.
before surgery, so you go in and you meet with your surgeon, and you meet for this 4-hour day. Like, that's your first step. You go to an information session, right? And then they bring you back, then they schedule your first appointment, and you better hope your insurance covers it, because it's not a covered benefit for a lot of insurance plans. And I can speak very deeply to that, because my bachelor's degree is in healthcare finance. So then you go back for this 4-hour. You meet with a dietitian, you meet with the surgeon, you meet with the medical team, and then you start working on these regular weigh-ins, right? So the purpose of that is to make sure you're changing your habits. You're working on your mental health. Now, because I had the depression, the bipolar disorder, the anxiety, I had to go through a very extent. My psychiatrist had to sign off on that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The social worker is the other person you meet with. Once you get through whatever your stipulations are for your insurance, mine happened to be six weigh-ins. Once you get through that part of it, then you start your 2-week pre-op diet. The purpose of that is to shrink your liver, because the majority of obese people, I would say all obese people, have what we call a fatty liver.
Right.
Think about the anatomy of your stomach and where the liver lies. They're going in there with, they're filling your stomach with air to do the surgery, because it's done robotically. And you think about the anatomy of your stomach, the liver, of your abdomen, the liver lives kind of to the side and to the right side and the back of the stomach, right? So they want that liver shrunk enough so that they don't nick it when they go in there with the robot. So your 2-week diet, and it depends on your program, because I work with some bariatric patients now, assist with them. And so the program that I currently assist with, my patients get sugar-free Jell-O, they get sugar-free liquids, and they get their protein shakes. That's it. The program that you and I went through, we got our protein shakes and we got 2 cups of non-starchy vegetables a day, right? So you do that for 2 weeks. That, I'm going to tell you what, the first 3 to 4 days are absolute hell. You are exhausted. You are miserable. You are grieving food, and then it gets a little bit easier, but the prize is at the end, right? The prize is at the end.
But I like the way you said grieving food, and that is so true. And every food commercial on television now is like amplified.
Yeah. So then you go for your surgery, the day of surgery, and I remember I forget what it was, but I will tell you, I lost about 50 pounds just giving up soda. I lost about 50 pounds right off the bat. That was the first vice I had to give up. Then you go in for surgery. I think I was at 3:33 the day of my surgery, because then you come in and they weigh you the day of your surgery. And then you go to the OR. You come out of the OR, and like, I was there an extra night because they couldn't control my nausea. Look, they've cut half my stomach out, 3/4 of my stomach out, right? Or with an RNY, they make a little pouch, and then, you know, they disconnect it from your intestine, and make a little pouch, and then they sew back your intestine back to a little hole in your pouch. So, you know, in an RNY, your stomach's about the size of a golf ball. From that point on, for another, you know, each process is different. Like the first week, you got a new baby stomach. You wouldn't come right out and give your baby like whole milk, right? So anyway, so yeah. So it's a whole process.
Right. Right.
And then long term, then, you know, long term is, you know, count tracking what you eat, being mindful, you know, and mindful, we forget, if we haven't dealt with what's in our head, you know, we're not going to know how to be mindful with what we're putting in our mouth.
Right. 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 I agree. So, you know what, we're going to take a quick break. Is it all right? And then when we come back, we'll actually show some pictures, if that's okay with you.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, we're Chantel Davis and Brian Davis. We own Willie Mae's Place and Legacy Vines Winery, located in Gilbert, Pennsylvania. We're open Wednesday through Saturday for dinner and wine flights and really delicious Southern comfort food. Come and join us. We'll happily seat you, your family. We have a beautiful farm-to-table garden, as well as 2 therapy donkeys named Freedom and Friar Tuck that you're welcome to come and visit. Give us a call if you have any questions or would like to make a reservation, and we look forward to seeing you.
Yes, we thank our friends over at Willie Mae's Place for sponsoring the PA Empowerment Network. And, you know, next time you come into this area, because I know you love our shop, right? You should, you know, check it out and go check out their donkeys. They're very cute. So we have up on the screen right now, this picture. Is that from 2014?
That's from 2014. That was right after I was admitted to the hospital with all my issues.
Right. And you said that you were about
I was about 410.
Yeah, 410.
I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what my heaviest recorded weight was at that point.
Sure.
I know that I was pretty messed up in the head back then.
Right. And I'm looking at that picture of you, and it's like you're bending forward a little bit, and you're not, you know, you're not standing up straight, because just everything is just, it's
well, part of that is I was leaning into the picture, because the picture is actually taken one of the last concerts that Charlie Daniels did at the State Theater. I was at that concert, and that was at the meet and greet. So
gotcha.
The part of that was I was leaning over his table, but yes, no, there, you know, you could, when you are that heavy, every bone in your body, everything aches.
Right.
So,
right. But then you also have the weight of the, you know, the mental health issues. I mean, it's just such a combination.
And you can see that in my face. You can see that whole unhappiness.
This picture right here from 2015. You look so sad.
Well, so that was taken the day that I found out the insurance plan we had didn't cover the weight loss surgery. That was that exact day. I remember that day like it was yesterday, because all of my coworkers, and I had a really good supportive team. Look, you got to sit down and talk to Chuck, who was our CEO. I had worked for a private billing company. So, you know, there were like 150, 200 of us that were employed by him. And they finally convinced me to sit down with him and have the conversation. So I did. I emailed him. I said, hey, I need to meet with you. And we went in, and I said, this is what's been going on in my life. You remember I was in the hospital in February of last year. I said, and this is why. I said, my weight's contributed to all this. I've been working through the bariatric program. And this one was in 2013. And I said, our insurance, unbeknownst to him, he did not know this. unbeknownst to him, I told him, our plan doesn't cover weight loss surgery. It's a plan exclusion. And he was like, I didn't know that.
Right.
He's like, he seriously did not know that. He said, we can go about this one of two ways. He says, I can pay cash for this for you. This is what I can give you. You would be responsible for this. And I'll talk to, because we had several hospital clients, you can go here or you can go here. Or you can wait till open enrollment and I can get a better insurance plan. Well, being the caretaker, being the caregiver, I'll wait, because here's the problem with that. If you pay cash and you have complications, the insurance most likely is not going to cover for those complications, and you're going to be left with some pretty hefty bills.
Sure.
So I opted to wait for sure enough, he was good on his word. We had a brand new plan come January 1st. The only stipulation is we were self-insured. So the only stipulation was, and when you're self-insured, you have to build up so much as an employer. When you're self-insured, you have to build up so much before it doesn't come out of the employer's pocket, right?
Right.
He says the only stipulation is please wait until October. And that's so that was January 1st, 2016, October. And then I had surgery in October of 2016.
Wow.
So, and that man, I will honestly say that man saved my life. Because,
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. So, I know there are a bunch of things that you want to talk about that, I feel are very important. We're going to talk about obesity, but let's talk a little bit more because, besides educating, we need to be helpful. Because, telling someone you took the easy way out is not helpful. It's not supportive. What are some other things that people have said or that you've heard, like maybe from other Barry buddies, that people have said that is negative, that is not helpful, that's very hurtful?
A big one from my childhood was, oh, you'd be so pretty if you just lose weight. That's a big one. That is not helpful. No. Some things that I've heard recently is, if you don't stop eating, you're going to be, not so much for me, but someone saying it to someone else, you're going to be as big as a house if you don't stop eating, and then some of the things, even, and I think as Barry buddies, we tend to get on our high horse, especially when you're newly out. And I did it too. I'm not gonna lie, right? I've did it too. Well, that's not in we call it our Barry Bible. It's our it's the manual we get from our surgery team with all of the instructions. Well, that's not in our Barry Bible. Well, those of us who are 9 years out, things change over time. The powers that be, what is it? American metabolic surgery. I forget what the ASMB something, I forget what it is, but they change based on evidence-based. There's evidence-based medicine, and those guidelines change sometimes, right? So, and everybody's journey is different. So what I can eat, hope you and I have known each other long enough, that we know pretty much what each other can handle and what we can't.
Right.
And so, everybody's journey is different. So when they start attacking, your Barry buddies they're your best friends, but then there's those times when you look at your Facebook page or something and they're like, well, you shouldn't eat that. Are you sure you want to eat that? You might dump with that.
Right.
So you just have to be really careful. And I'm guilty of it too. I'm not, I have to be careful too.
I think some of the things that I've heard people say is, when are you going to stop losing weight? Oh my gosh, you're too thin.
Oh,
you looked better when you were heavier.
I've heard that a lot recently.
Sagging. These are not helpful things to tell people.
Have you lost more weight?
Right.
As a matter of fact, I haven't. I'm very proud of it.
Yes. So what are things that can be more supportive? Like, what are a few things? I mean, me in general, I try to never, I tried to not make those comments to people about you should be following this and you should be following that. But it is difficult. And, what have you found from people who have not had weight loss surgery that has been supportive? Like, what types of things that can people say to their friends or family that are thinking of having, or had weight loss surgery, to be supportive of them? Because it's not an easy decision, and it's not the easy way out.
It is not an easy decision. I've always been the type of person that kind of beats to the tune of my own drum. So I am not really sure how to answer that. I can relay a story
Sure.
that happened as I was getting ready to go into my 2-week pre-op diet, and I was sitting. Joe and I had a free dinner at the Sands, and we went in for that. And I ordered all of this food, just all this food. And he looks at me. He says, "What are you doing?" And it was a loving, "What are you doing?"
Right.
And I'm like, and I very seriously looked at him and said, "I don't want to do this." And he said nothing. To be honest with you, he said nothing. All he did was very calmly get up and walk out. And I sat at and yeah, I know you're shaking your head because that's very not Joe. But that him walking out on me in that moment made my brain think, he really does care for me, because he didn't say anything, because Joe is a yeller, and Joe is, he's a question. I don't want to use the word yell. That's derogatory. He's not afraid of confrontation, and he will call you out on your BS. Right. And so when he just walked away and said nothing, the light bulb went on in my head. Oh my God, this man really does love me, and he's not going to leave my side. So, there's the old saying, some things are better left unsaid. That's a big one for me. And I'm learning it, because I'm not afraid of confrontation either. And I'll call people out on their BS. I'll call myself out on my BS.
Right.
So, that's a big one. Just be there. Just be their support. You may not agree with their decision, and you may think it's going to be the worst decision on the face of the planet. But just stand by their side. Just hold their hand through the process.
Right. Because it's scary.
It's very scary. It's
an entire lifestyle change.
It's very scary. I would say that decision was more scary than going back to nursing school at 55 years old.
Wow.
To be honest with you.
Wow.
That decision, going back to nursing school, was easy compared to the decision I made 9 years ago. Right.
Right. It's just mind-boggling to think about, how people who don't have a weight problem, or who don't have the mental health or emotional baggage that could potentially cause this, I just truly don't understand. And I thank you for, being so open and talking with us here about it. And I know that you are very, very open in general, and, that is very much appreciated by, I'm sure, so many others who have been through weight loss surgery or are thinking about weight loss surgery. And I know the RN student in you wants to talk about some other things. So I'm going to actually start it off, and then you take the ball and run with it in whatever direction you want to go. I was I was a director of a food pantry, and there are not a whole lot of food, and it's gotten better. And, you really try to do your best. But when it comes to foods that are given at a food pantry, there's canned foods, which has, all those additives, and, fresh fruits and vegetables when you can get them. And, and the meats, typically do come from, like the state, they were government subsidized. Again, I've been away from that for a while, and the way government is right now, I don't know how that is working, but, the eating style and the foods and supplements required for after weight loss surgery are almost impossible if you're unable to make ends meet. And that's where, we have we're going to talk more. You're going to talk more about, poverty and obesity, but now you have poverty, and then people who who are obese and whatever the reasons were, but they need assistance, you know, in meeting their basic needs, and we can't help them at a food pantry because we don't get, or we don't have what they need to stay healthy. So let's
So according to the CDC, 42.5% of the people living less than 130% or less of the federal poverty level are obese. That was from 2000 and I think 2000.
Now this is just in the United States. This is America. This is not the world.
This is just in the United States, correct? So that's a big number. You know, on the flip side of that, the higher your income, the more tendency you have to be obese as well. The difference there is my bariatric vitamins, I have them on direct ship from Amazon, and they run me about $50 a month. People who are on assistance don't have that.
Right.
One of the things that one of the study in preparing for this today, one of the studies I pulled out, the reason for this obesity in this poverty level is the lack of access to the healthy foods, the fresh fruits, vegetables, and you know that from running the food pantry. It's being able to afford the vitamins. Gym memberships, like I will tell you, I try now. Right now, I'm preparing to go back to school in August for my last semester. I graduate in December.
Congratulations.
So I have been working 3 days a week. I've been working double shifts to cover my tuition. It's been tough getting to the gym because, you know, I'm 58 years old. I come home on the nights I'm not working double shifts and I go to bed.
Right.
So, but I'm very active at the hospital, so that helps. But so it's, you know, you can't afford that gym membership. You know, even $10 a month for some of these people is a stretch for, you know, some of our gyms. I was, you know, there's other things that there's just a lot of barriers. There's a barrier to access to care, right? And I see that with this big, beautiful bill. I see that access getting tougher in our future. You know,
especially in rural communities.
Yes, because, you know, we've, you know, the hospital I work for, you know, we've already started having the conversation how it's going to affect our bottom lines, right? You know, I'm sure you have too. We've sat and read all 983 because, you know, because that's who we are and we want to know how it affects us. So, you know, I've sat and read all 983 pages. Well, there's some things I agree with. There are some things I do not. And one of them is what they've done to healthcare. I do not. You know, we happen to live in an expanded Medicaid state that we don't know how that's going to how that's going to affect our state funding. Right. So that's going to, in the areas, I am very rural, you're very metropolitan where you're at. So there's a difference. So, you know, well, not so much where you are, but south of you is more.
Actually, technically, the township that I live in is considered urban.
Okay, yeah. So I can see that affecting us here, big time. You know, we already coming out of COVID. You know, we've dug deep to dig ourselves out of the red. Right. And so now we've got this big, beautiful bill coming in that's not so big and beautiful. And this is my opinion. We're going to be giving more, you know, charity care because being not for profit, you have to give out so much charity care.
Right.
You know, so there you're losing your education, you know, because what happens is when you seek and enter wherever you enter the healthcare system, there's patient education that goes along with that. Obesity plays into the diabetes realm of it, right? The type 2 diabetes. We're seeing that more in younger children. We're seeing that. And that's what happens in your poverty is maybe safety is, you know, even in like the food deserts where your safety is compromised because of gangs and gang warfare and things like that. So they're not leaving the house because it's not safe to leave their house. So they're sitting around, they're sedentary. You know, there's so much, you know, there's just so much that affects that. And, you know, the other things that go along with the obesity is high blood pressure, hypertension, and I'm trying to think some of the other with kidney disease, fatty liver, all of those things. And those are what regulate your body.
Right.
You know?
I mean, your A1C is just.
Yeah. So those things all, they all create a balance in your body when they are regulated appropriately. And once you get to be diabetic, here's your goal. Your goal is to prolong the effects of the disease. Speaking as a nursing student, a diabetic, once you're diagnosed with diabetes, your goal then becomes to control that diabetes so that you don't see the long-term effects, the acute kidney failure, the retinopathies, the blindness with the eyes, the things like that, right? And these are all things, yeah, the neuropathy is incredible. My son's going through that right now. So, because he, family history plays a big key. Right. There's my son, and my son's a vet. He did 2 tours in Afghanistan. So
please thank him for his service from us.
So thank you. And that, I will say, that contributed to my depression as well, because both of my children were deployed at the same time. One was in Afghanistan, one was in Iraq.
Sure.
They can tell you all you want not to pay attention to, you still do. But so that contributes.
And it's a chemical imbalance.
It's really is.
A chemical imbalance, and it throws off the whole bodies. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's
homeostasis is totally off.
When you cannot control that diabetes with medications because you don't have access to those medications because of your insurance, you can't control that. So then you end up, so that significantly adds to the cost that it costs us as an organization to provide care for these patients. And I forget exactly what the number is, but it significantly increases our ability to care for our patients because they're coming in sicker to us in the ER and things like that. So right. It's sadly, obesity is a snowball effect that, I remember saying, well, I'm healthy. I may be obese, but I'm healthy. Guess what? I was only healthy for so long before I crashed, because your body can only compensate for so long before it crashes.
Right. Right. Now, I mean, we're 2 white women talking about, our health and rural healthcare and things like that. But let's talk a little bit maybe about, the African-American population and the higher risk factors for these types of disorders, diseases, and the lack of healthcare in urban areas as well.
So, and that's big. So African-American women and have a greater risk just by their ethnicity, a greater risk of obesity, a greater risk of high blood pressure, a greater risk of all sorts of other issues going on. And so, in fact, when you look at the CDC, their numbers are much greater than you and I as white women.
Right.
And I, my daughter-in-law is biracial, and I never really understood that until, her and I have become very close, and I've been able to, sit down with her and discuss that with her.
Right.
So it's,
and the access to healthcare.
The access is just, I can't talk access enough because it's so limited. I mean, we have people coming to our ER just because it's 2 months of a wait to get into a mental health clinic. Right.
That's a whole other show, girlfriend.
I know. I know I'm preaching to the choir on that one. I know, but that's what's happening. So but it's happening on all sorts of levels, right? For their diabetes, look, they're accessing the wrong level of care. The whole purpose is you need the right level of care at the right time in the right setting. And if we're losing due to financial statuses, we're losing that right access at the right time in the right setting.
Right.
So, and I fear that that's going to get worse.
And I'm sorry, I just, shiny keys thought popped in my head. I feel also from my own experiences that sometimes medical professionals are judgmental, or maybe not judgmental as much as they don't look at all the same factors that we're looking at here when it comes to obesity or being larger. I have a very bad back. I've had degenerative disc disease since I'm in my early 20s. It is something that is hereditary in my family. And I had surgery, and then, 10 years later, I had surgery. And after that, at one point, I had gone back to my surgeon because I was having issues. He no longer does surgery. He sent me to a very, very well-known neurosurgeon in Philadelphia. He gave me some options. I also wanted to seek an orthopedic point of view. So I went to a very, very well-known orthopedic institute in Philadelphia also. And the doctor told me that my back would be fine as long as I lost weight. So, that was over 100 pounds ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm now looking at potentially a third back surgery because of my back. It had nothing to do. Does the weight exacerbate it? Sure. I mean, but my back itself had nothing to do with the weight, because not injury, that the hereditary problem that was happened when I was in my 20s, when I was very athletic. So I feel that, also practitioners aren't grasping the full effectiveness. And what can we do? Like, what can we do?
that is a whole other show in and of itself as well. Okay. So here's what happens. And so the orthopedic doctor said that to you because, in my opinion, would be my educated, like, that's not his wheelhouse. Does losing weight absolutely help that? I was told the same thing with my knees. I have chondromalacia, and I was told the exact same thing by an Allentown practice, right? So I was told the exact same thing. Does it help to lose the weight? Absolutely. Have I I still, this is 20 years later, they have not had to touch my knees. And I, I like to run. So,
yes. The rain.
In the rain, yes. That's a whole story. They would get a kick out of that. I think what is happening, and so for a long time, we were paying our physicians based on what we call RVUs, or relative value units. So the more patients you got in and the faster you got them out, the more money you're going to make as a physician, right? And the more money the hospital is going to collect from the insurance companies. So it became like an assembly line, basically. So we're forgetting to educate. There's a difference between educating and being, saying things like that.
Right.
When you educate, you sit down with your patients and you review, here is where your labs are. Here is what we need to do.
Right.
Here's what's going to happen if we don't do that. And then allow the patient, because the patient has to be responsible for some of that,
sure,
that decision making as well. And I think, and I see it, the days I work in the emergency room, right? It's, we forget that it's not an assembly line. And that's one of the things as we move to, I'm seeing a trend where we're moving to value-based care. And I'm hoping that, and there was a stint where we were looking more at outcomes when we cared for our patients for our payments. But I'm hoping that as we move more to value-based care, we get back, because I grew up in rural, on the Iowa South Dakota border. Dr. Trostick was the best. Him and Dr. Schwarber, they were great physicians, right? They were fantastic, and they educated us. They did everything they could to help my obesity as a child. It's hard as a child because you don't see that part of it. You just see them as attacking you.
Right.
But, at some point the patient has to be responsible
Right.
for their care too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but if you get back to properly educating versus
Right.
that attack, for a lack of a better word,
Right. Right.
where, I think that in the long run will help.
Right. This is such a great conversation. I know we could go on for hours upon hours, but we'll have to, plan more of these. Just, 30 seconds or so. What's something that you want to just wrap up with? And I just want to thank you real quick for joining me this evening. You are beautiful. You're amazing. And you're so positive. So anything that you would like to end?
In 30 seconds, every human being is amazing. Every human being is wonderful. Every human being has something to contribute to our society, no matter what. And you got to continue to just love people and just move forward. Be somebody's light, because you never know. There's always somebody watching you. Just be somebody's light.
That's right. Amen to that. Thank you so much, Johnette Michaels. And this is Mental Health Mondays with Hope. And we'll see you again next Monday. Thank you again.
Thank you, Hope, very much for having me.